It's the same,
Same subject matter?
yes, it's officers from the 2010 incident.
All right. Mr. Meyer, anything that you need to be heard on, sir?
No, you're not, rather than just renew my objection on the
All right. Thank you. In that case, let's go ahead and bring yours out, please. Yes, sir. Jurors. All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Just check and make sure you have your notebooks. And all right, everybody have what they need, pens, etc. Very good. All right, Ms. Franks, is there further evidence for the state?
Yes, sir, Your Honor. The state will be calling Officer C.O. Knight, if I may step out. Let you left hand on the Bible and raise your right, please. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you shall now give before the case now being heard shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Please be seated.
Ms. Franks?
Yes, sir. Sir, if you state your name and spell it for the court reporter.
Curtis Knight, CurtisKnighghc,
And how are you employed?
as a police officer for the city of Durham.
What are your duties at the present time?
I'm a community resource officer.
In what capacity were you working in April of 2011?
I was working uniform patrol in District 4.
Were you working on April 3rd, 2011?
Yes,
Did you have an occasion to go to Century Oaks Drive to the Country Scene Apartments on that particular evening?
I did.
What was your first reason for being at that particular apartment complex?
I was called out in reference to an illegally parked vehicle.
And what did you do?
I sat there and waited for a tow truck to come remove the vehicle that was illegally parked.
Do you remember approximately what time you may have gotten there for that call?
I don't. It was sometime during the evening.
Did you have an occasion while you were on that call to see the defendant or Reginald Day?
I did.
And what drew your attention to either the defendant or Reginald Day?
While I was waiting for the wrecker, the tow truck to come, a vehicle pulled up in front of my vehicle, and a male and a female got out of that vehicle. That vehicle pulled off, and the two individuals that got out of the vehicle approached my vehicle.
Okay, when you saw the male and female, did you recognize them?
Not at first.
And you say they approached your vehicle?
That's correct.
And what happened?
The male and the female approached my vehicle. They asked what was I doing out there, and I told them that I was waiting for a wrecker to arrive to remove the illegally parked vehicle.
And what happened? Did they say anything else to you?
Yes.
What else did they say to you?
The defendant asked me if I knew who she was. Initially, I told her no. She then stated that I had assisted her prior with a case, a domestic violence case at the Durham County Jail. And at that time, I told her that I did remember her. And then she asked me for one of my business cards, and I gave her one of my business cards. And she said, "Thank you."
Now, what would be on your business card?
Telephone numbers, the address for the Durham Police Department, and possibly email address.
And would the phone number have been to a particular district or division in the police department?
Yes.
What would it have been to?
It should have been to District 4, my substation, the number that was on the card.
And what is that phone number?
I believe it, to the best of my knowledge, 919-560-4415.
Now, when she asked, the defendant asked if you recognized her, did you recognize who her name was, or just as a person that you had assisted before?
I can't recall. I can't recall.
After she got one of your cards, what happened?
After she took one of my cards, Mr. Day asked her, "Hey, let's come on, let's go," and they both walked off towards their apartment.
And would you describe to the jury how the defendant, Mr. Day, appeared to you at that time, physically?
Physically, he appeared to be in good health, normal.
Could you tell if either the victim or the defendant had been drinking?
In my opinion, they seem to be in good spirits. They appear to be under influence of some type of substance.
Did they go into the apartment?
Yes.
Did you see either Reginald Day or the defendant again after they went into the apartment?
I did.
When did you see them at that time?
A few minutes later, the defendant came outside and sat on the steps. And when she came out, Mr. Day came out, and it appeared as if they were having some type of conversation. And shortly after, they both walked back in. Did
Mr. Day say anything when he came out?
From where I was and where they were, I really couldn't hear them, but it appeared that they was having some type of conversation.
And then what happened?
They both went back inside.
Did you see them again?
I did.
And when was that?
Shortly after that, the defendant came back out of the apartment again and started walking towards the back of my patrol vehicle. And Mr. Day came out and shouted something along the lines of, "Crystal, give me my $700.
And then what happened?
I got out of my patrol vehicle and advised them that they could not be outside shouting, making a lot of noise.
And what happened?
After that, I told Mr. Day that if he believed that the defendant took his money, he could go take out warrants, and then he advised me that he wasn't going to worry about it.
And what did the defendant do?
They both agreed to not to be out making a lot of noise, and they both went back into the apartment.
Now, other than him yelling to the defendant to give him his $700 back, do you see them yelling at each other anymore, having any type of physical contact?
No.
Now, after they went in this time, what did you do?
At this time, the wrecker pulled up, towed the vehicle, and there was a gentleman that showed up, Mr. Wilson, and he started walking towards Mr. Day's, or the apartment that they were in. And I asked him where he was going, and he said he was going to visit his cousin. And I said, okay, and then I left.
Did you have an occasion to go back to that same area?
Yes.
How long after you left, if you recall, did you have to go back?
I don't recall the exact amount of time, but I did respond back to that address, that location.
On the same evening?
Yes.
And what happened when you responded back to that location?
Well, I was initially dispatched to that residence, reference to a stabbing call. When I got there, I was the first officer on scene. I was flagged down by Mr. Day's cousin, Mr. Wilson. He told me that Mr. Day had been stabbed.
And was that Carlos Wilson?
Yes.
And after you were told this, what did you do?
He said that Mr. Day was inside and he was bleeding. So he was bleeding. He showed me where he pointed to where the apartment was. When I went inside, I noticed in the front room area there was broken glass on the floor. There were blood stains on the carpet, and there were several knives on the floor.
And what did you do?
I called for Mr. Day, and he answered, "I'm in here." He was in the bedroom. I went in the bedroom and found him bleeding.
Could you see the blood as he was bleeding?
Yes.
And what did you do?
I asked him what happened. He told me he had been stabbed with a knife.
Did he tell you who stabbed him?
Yes.
Who?
Crystal Mangum.
Did he tell you anything else?
He told me that she left on foot, and he told me that she could possibly be going to Bainbridge Apartments, which is a few blocks away from the location where they were at.
Did you ask him any questions?
I asked him if she took the knife that he said that she used with him, and he said he didn't know.
And how was he bleeding?
He was bleeding, according to my notes, from his upper left side.
Just a little bit, a lot, or what?
Severely, according to my notes.
Did he tell you anything about the money?
No.
After he told you this, what, if anything, did you do?
At that time, other officers arrived, EMS arrived, and at that point, once there were other officers out, I left the crime scene to go assist with finding the defendant.
Did you do anything else after that?
No.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination, Mr. Meyer.
Yes. Good afternoon, Officer Knight. Now, you indicated that this was the first evening that you recall having met or seen Miss Mangum?
From the news, I've heard about a situation that happened in the past, but when she initially approached me that night, I didn't initially recognize who she was.
Have you ever been to 2010 Savannah Drive in Durham?
I don't recall.
Did you ever go there to meet the defendant for dinner?
No.
You've never had any kind of a relationship with Miss Mangum?
No.
When she came out the second time when Day was yelling, did she ask you to give her a ride to her aunt's house?
No.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Ms. Franks?
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. May step down.
We'd ask that Officer Knight be released, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, sir, you're released from your subpoena. You're free to go.
Thank you.
Further evidence for the state?
Yes, Your Honor. State will call Officer Tyler. Officer, would you please state your name and spell it for the court reporter?
Sergeant John Tyler, first name John, last name Tyler,
And how are you employed?
with the City of Durham Police Department.
What are your current duties?
I'm a sergeant on uniform patrol, so my current duties are I supervise 11 officers that are under me in a district within the City of Durham.
And in February 17th, 18th of 2010, how were you employed?
At that time, I was employed as a corporal in District 4, which is over in the North Carolina Central University area of Durham.
Did you have an occasion on those 2 dates to respond to a call at Lincoln Street?
I did. Call came out at 220 or 2220 Lincoln Street as far as a domestic violence call. Normally it's what we call a dual dispatch, so 2 officers respond and dispatch. Officer Thompson was the first officer to respond, and I was the second officer to arrive.
Would you describe the weather to the jury on that day?
That day, the actual weather, as far as it was no precipitation or no rain, it was clear, but the temperature was very cold. I don't know exactly what the temperature was, but I do recall it was very cold outside.
And what, if anything, did you observe when you arrived at that location?
As I was walking up to as I parked on Lincoln Street, my vehicle was facing north. I parked actually so if 220 or 2220 is here, I parked one street north of 2220 Lincoln Street and walked back. When I walked up the driveway, I noticed that there was I believe it was an Oldsmobile. Yes, it was a blue Oldsmobile in the driveway. It struck me odd because all 4 tires were flat, and the front windshield was completely smashed. The reason it struck me odd is because it did not appear to be an abandoned vehicle like you would normally see in a driveway where leaves and stuff or like caught up under the tire after like a rain and stuff flows down the driveway. None of that I observed. So that's why it caught my eyes. I was walking up to the door of 2220 Lincoln Street.
Were you able to determine what happened to the tires on the vehicle?
I was at the end of our investigation. Actually, Mr. Milton Walker advised me towards the end of our investigation that, and actually he stated, I asked Mr. Walker about the damage to his vehicle, and he stated that Ms. Mangum had cut his tires and broke his windshield. I asked him when that was actually done, and he said tonight, as far as the vehicle was concerned.
When you approached the, was it a house, apartment complex, what was it?
It was actually a brick duplex, single story. There was an A and B side, so A was kind of to the right, and then B was to the left.
When you approached the residence, who was there?
When I approached, Officer Thompson was already inside. I could see because the front door was ajar and the storm door was mostly glass. And I could see Officer Thompson. The apartment, the way it was set up, it was kind of it was a open floor plan somewhat. The living room, dining room, and kitchen were all kind of open, and then you had an L-shaped hallway that was very short that went back to 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. As I was standing at the front door, I could see Officer Thompson. I couldn't tell what she was saying, but I could see her talking with a female that was walking down the long part of the L-shaped hallway. And just to give you an idea, the back part is the hallway that led to the 2 bedrooms and the bathroom, and then the bottom part of the so-called L shape came out to the living room, dining room, and kitchen.
Did you go into the apartment?
I did. At that point, I opened the door, walked in, and I believe Officer Thompson had made contact with me at that point. Just prior to that, when I walked in, I also noticed a green bag full of clothing that was outside. Once again, it was in an abnormal spot because it was out in the front yard. It was also a broken vacuum cleaner that was lying beside the green bag that was full of clothing in the front yard of the apartment.
Was Officer Thompson talking to the female you had observed through the door?
Yes. At first, again, all I saw was a female walking back and forth from bedroom to what later I observed to be the bathroom. She was walking back and forth. I could see Officer Thompson trying to get the female's attention, and that's when I walked in and made contact with Officer Thompson.
Did you know who the female was at that time?
I did not at that time.
Were you able to overhear what, if anything, Officer Thompson and the female were talking about?
I did, as I opened the door and started walking through the living room, I did overhear Officer Thompson ask the female to stop walking around and to tell her what had happened. And once again, I could see Miss Mangum continuing to take items from a bedroom and walk down the hallway with them.
What did the female say, if anything, in front of you?
Now, the female, Officer Thompson advised me that the female did not need our assistance. I then walked back towards the bedroom where Miss Mangum was standing, and then I asked Miss Mangum, because of course at this point, now keeping in mind, I didn't have a clue as far as the identity of the female. It wasn't until later on, after she was secured in the back of a patrol car, that someone actually came up and told me who it was. And then that's when I came to know the identity of that it was Crystal Mangum. But that was way later on in the investigation. She was already secured and handcuffed and under arrest in the backseat of a patrol car. But I actually had walked up to her and I asked her, I basically said, ma'am, do you need police assistance? Because once again, she's being very defiant, not telling us anything, not telling us what happened. At that time, you don't have much information as far as who called. I found that odd because, you know, I thought here it was a female had called for police assistance, and then we finally get there, and now she doesn't even want to talk to us or tell us what happened.
What did she say to you in response to your question?
She ended up telling me that, no, that she just wanted us to leave.
Now, did anyone else come to the apartment or duplex?
Yes. After Miss Mangum had said that, I had walked back towards the living room, and I had heard a knock at the door. Because the door was still open and the storm door was just half glass, I could actually see when I got in there, I could see a black male standing on the porch and again, this struck me odd because he had no shirt on, and no shoes, and like some sweatpants that were wet around the bottoms. He also had no socks on. And again, I don't know what the temperature was, but I do recall it was very cold enough to where I'd walked outside and I'd asked him if I could help him. And what I noticed was that he was very out of breath. He was shaking, what I would say, uncontrollably. He was breathing very heavily as if he was trying to catch his breath. And so after about roughly 45 seconds to 1 minute of that, you know, he was so out of breath and was shaking so bad, he couldn't talk to me. I did notice that within that 45 seconds to 60 seconds, I got also cold. I do remember that I was wearing a long sleeve shirt like I am right now, and this gentleman was wearing nothing except a pair of sweatpants. At which point, I thought I'd ask him to come inside and sit in a chair that was in the middle of the living room to ask him to find out what happened. Because you've got to keep in mind, we still don't know what happened at 2220 Lincoln Street at this point. We've been there for somewhat of a time.
Did you know who this guy was at that time?
I cannot recall when he identified himself, if it was at the door or if it was later, but he was identified as Milton Walker. But again, I can't recall as when he did identify himself as Milton Walker.
Now, once you had him inside, what did you do?
I asked him to sit in a chair, and basically to get warm, to catch his breath, and to tell me what happened. I can't remember I believe if it was outside or inside, that I did notice that he had scratches over his entire right arm. To me, it appeared to be either nail scratches, or if you had walked through a thorn bush or something. However, it was only on his right arm that I can remember. But there were scratches on his entire right arm.
And then what happened?
I asked him to come inside, sit in a chair, catch his breath, warm up a little bit, and tell me what happened. Mr. Milton was sitting in, it was a little folding chair. As I recall, there was not very much furniture, actual, when I say furniture, like a couch or a love seat or a reclining chair or anything like that in the living room. There was debris, but I don't recall very much furniture. I do recall a folding chair that was there that I'd asked Mr. Walker to sit in and catch his breath.
Did he tell you what happened?
No, actually, he never did at that point. Basically, as he was catching his breath and warming up, because again, I could tell he was warming up because his shaking started slowing down. I asked him what happened, and as he began to tell me what happened, at this point, how I'm standing in the living room, Mr. Walker's kind of here, and Miss Mangum and Officer Thompson is kind of off in my left peripheral vision in that L shape of the hallway. Because once again, Officer Thompson was kind of back that way. Now she was, from what I can recall, kind of keep an eye on me anytime you're in a domestic violence situation. As far as officers, you want to always keep visual contact with your fellow officer. It's just a safety issue. So I do recall Officer Thompson out on my left periphery, and also Miss Mangum. And at this point, as soon as he had started to tell me what happened, all of a sudden, Miss Mangum just snapped. And what I mean by that is that I remember focusing my attention towards Officer Thompson and Miss Mangum, and Miss Mangum yelling to the top of her lungs, and her statement was, "I'm going to stab you, motherfucker." As she's doing that, she's kind of, Officer Thompson and myself are kind of vertically challenged. We're on the short side. So Miss Mangum is kind of tall, and I could see her kind of towering over Officer Thompson. And Officer Thompson trying to, I don't know exactly what she did, but I do remember my focus was towards Miss Mangum and Officer Thompson. And because at that point I felt, based on the way she said it, I would say the determination, she was angry. She went from not wanting to speak to anybody, and especially us, to making that statement and going after, going towards the area in an aggressive manner as to where Milton Walker was sitting. Now keeping in mind that directly to my left, Miss Mangum's right, is an open kitchen, which is where a lot of as we're trained, a lot of weapons can be found in anybody's kitchen. I wanted to keep her, at that point I felt that the threat could have been imminent. I approached her, I advised her that she was under arrest. She immediately began to resist both Officer Thompson and she was currently resisting Officer Thompson, at which point I moved in to try to gain control of her hands so we could handcuff her.
What was the defendant doing?
She was basically, well, at first with Officer Thompson, she was kind of going over top of, I don't recall if it was the left or right shoulder, but kind of like over Officer Thompson in a direction towards Mr. Milton and myself, because I was sitting there talking with him. At some point, Officer Silla had come in. I knew that, again, I don't know who the primary aggressor is at this point with the investigation. I know that assault had taken place. However, with Miss Mangum, with her demeanor the way it was and her aggressiveness towards Mr. Walker and the threat that she just communicated, I knew at that point we needed to get her under control. Mr. Walker basically was still sitting in the chair. As I looked back, Officer Silla was there to watch him. Miss Mangum was very much actively resisting our arrest. I think she made a comment that her back at some point she made the comment that her back, my back or something like that. I kept telling her to stop resisting. If you stop resisting, you know, everything will be better. We ended up falling in this small area. Now the hallway had a lot of debris in it. I do remember in the corner of the L-shaped hallway, now keeping in mind, I'm estimating this hallway was no more than about 36 to 40 inches wide. And in the corner was a kerosene heater, so that takes up, you know, and it was a full-size kerosene heater, so that took up a lot of the area. I just remember me and Miss Mangum and Officer Thompson kind of falling up against the wall, and then we ended up sliding down the bathroom door, which was now closed, into the floor. She still she took her arms and kind of pulled them up underneath her, which seems to be a normal tactic of people that don't want to be placed under arrest. Our job is to get their hands behind their back and get them handcuffed, and she was kind of pulling them up under her like this.
Were you able to finally get her handcuffed?
Eventually we were. Once we got her handcuffed, she went completely flaccid.
And what do you mean by that?
I mean, she did not, it was the best way I can describe it, it's like dead weight. She didn't move, she didn't groan, she complained of her back while she was resisting, but as soon as we got her handcuffed, she didn't complain of her back, she didn't complain of any injuries, she didn't say anything, do anything, she just laid there in the middle of the hallway.
Did y'all have to carry her?
Yes, we ended up, because of the tight area, from what I can recall, me and Officer Thompson was able to get her down the back part of the hallway and into what I call the bottom part of the L shape, and that's when Officer Silla came over and assisted us. I kept asking her to set up, and there's a certain way that you can advise someone to set up that makes it very easy for them when their hands are behind their back. I kept telling her, you know, bring your knees up to you, we're going to roll you over to the left. She was not even focused on me. She was not following any of my direction or commands. So at that point, I got myself, Officer Thompson, and Officer Silla, and we kind of got in a three-point, what I call a three-point carry. We kind of picked her up, brought her out to the living room. Again, she was showing no signs of following any directions that we had advised her to sit up or stand up or walk or anything like that at that point.
Were you eventually able to get her into a vehicle?
Someone was. Yes, I do recall later on she was in the backseat of a patrol car.
Did you ever get a name of this person? Did this person ever give you a name?
Miss Mangum never gave me a name. Eventually someone walked up to me and said, do you realize that's Crystal Mangum? And I said, I did not. But at that point, everything's over. And actually she's on her way almost, she's getting ready to be transported to the jail at that point. The charges were discussed at that point. Everything was pretty much over when I found out that the person in the backseat of the patrol car was Crystal Mangum.
Did you notice any injuries on the defendant?
I don't recall any, and it's not in my supplemental narrative, so I don't recall any.
And other than the scratches on the arm, did you notice any other injuries on Milton Walker?
And once again, I don't recall any further injuries other than the scratches on his arm. It's not notated in my report, and I just don't recall any.
Thank you, officer. No further questions.
Mr. Meyer?
Good afternoon, Sergeant.
Good afternoon.
Just a few questions. This whole time that Miss Mangum was struggling and resisting you, did you ever consider holding her down by the neck until she calmed down?
Objection, no.
Sustained.
When you spoke with Milton, did he tell you that prior to this, he had held Miss Mangum down by the neck until she calmed down?
No, Mr. Walker never got a chance to tell me what happened.
Did you ever see Miss Mangum with a knife?
I do not recall seeing Miss Mangum with a knife.
Nothing further.
Ms. Franks, anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Sir, you may step down.
And we would ask that Officer Powell be released.
All right, sir, you're released from your subpoena. You're free to go.
Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, as I instructed you on Friday, this evidence received through this witness tending to show that on a prior occasion in February 2010, the defendant in this case was involved in a confrontation with another individual, namely Milton Walker. This evidence is received solely for the purposes of showing that the defendant had a motive for the commission of the crime charged in this case, that the defendant had the intent, which is a necessary element for the crime charged in this case, and that there existed in the mind of the defendant a plan involving the crime charged in this case. If you believe the evidence, you may consider it, but only for the limited purpose for which it was received, and you may not consider it for any other purpose. Further evidence?
Yes, Your Honor. The state would call Monica Evans.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you shall give the court in the case now being heard shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please be seated.
Ms. Franks?
Thank you. Ma'am, if you would state your name and spell it for the court reporter.
Monica Evans, Monicaevans.
How are you employed?
I am employed with the Durham Police Department, assigned to the homicide unit.
Back in February of 2010, how were you employed?
I was an investigator at the domestic violence unit.
Do you have an occasion to be involved in an investigation of a domestic violence incident that occurred at 2220 Lincoln Street, February 17th, 18th, 2010?
Yes,
What were your duties as far as that investigation?
I was requested to take pictures of the defendant.
And did you know who the defendant was at that time?
Yes,
And what was the defendant's name?
Crystal Mangum,
And where were these photographs taken?
during regional hospital.
And would you describe how you found the defendant when you went to the hospital to take these pictures?
She was apparently over there because she was complaining of pain. She was transported by an ambulance over there.
Can I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
If I may approach her.
Yes, ma'am.
Officer, I show you what's been marked, States Exhibits 170 through 170. You take a moment, see if you can identify those items as a group.
These are the pictures I took of the defendant at the hospital.
And other than the exhibit sticker on the back of each picture, has it been altered in any way?
No.
Does it substantially show the defendant as she appeared on those dates?
Yes.
Your Honor, state you move to enter into evidence States Exhibits 170 through 187.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
They're admitted for illustrative purposes.
Thank you, Your Honor. If you will begin with States Exhibit 170, place it up on the Elmo. Yes, ma'am. Huh? Yeah, what's that? Come here, Coach Young.
The other way around?
Yes, it's up.
Was that face down?
No, you face it up. I'm sorry? The projectors don't have a light on. first witness, Sean.
Yes, ma'am.
As you put each picture up, if you will, move your attention
Okay.
so that we did.
Okay.
If you would, describe for the jury what State's Exhibit 170 shows.
It's a picture of the defendant at the hospital.
And 171,
It's a picture of the defendant's face.
left side,
Yes.
172,
Picture of the defendant's face is going to be right side.
and right up next to her braids, above her eyebrow, what is that?
It looks like a pimple that she scratched.
And 173,
Defendant's face and chapped lips.
now, are those lips cracked and bleeding?
Yeah, it appeared to be that they were dry and chapped.
174,
Defendant's upper lip.
were any injuries observed here?
No.
And 175, what does that show?
Defendant's neck. The back of her neck.
Any injuries observed at the back of the neck?
No.
And 176,
It's going to be the defendant's at the back of her neck again.
thank you, 177,
You said 177?
yes, ma'am.
I do not have 177. The next one I have is 178.
Okay. If you would do that one.
It's going to be the back of her neck on the left side.
The opposite side of earlier,
Yes.
were any injuries observed there?
It looks like an old scratch.
And 179,
It's a close-up of the scratch.
and State's Exhibit 180.
It's going to be the front of her neck.
And are there any injuries there?
It looks like an old scratch that's been healed or is healing.
And State's Exhibit 181.
It's going to be her arms and hands.
182.
Arms and hand again, the front.
Thank you. 183.
It's going to be her, I believe, her left arm.
184.
It's gonna be her upper arm, left upper arm.
185.
That's gonna be her left arm near her wrist area.
And what, if any, injuries does that show?
It looks like a scratch with a scab on it.
And 186?
The palm of her hands?
Were there any injuries on her hands?
No.
And 187?
The defendant's hands?
Were there any injuries on the top of her hands?
No.
Did the defendant say anything to you at the time you were taking these pictures?
No. She only asked if I was gonna, she asked why I was gonna take pictures of her back. That's the only question she had.
How did she appear at the time you walked in the hospital to take the pictures?
She appears single-minded and angry.
No further questions, Shirley.
Let me just note for the record, I believe it was 177. There apparently was no exhibit, just because I admitted 170 through 187, so just for record purposes, there is no 177.
That is correct.
All right. Mr. Meyer, any
Yeah,
cross-examination?
Yeah.
Sir.
Good afternoon, Officer Evans.
Good afternoon.
You said she asked if you were going to take pictures of her back. Did you?
Yes.
Okay. But there, none of the ones you showed her back.
No.
Nothing further.
Ms. Frank.
Officer Evans, were there any injuries on her back?
It appeared that it was like where they're having like sticker. There's some type of stickers that have been placed on her back and they have been moved, so it looked like the shadow of the stickers.
From some type of medical procedure?
That's what it appeared to me.
Other than the pictures that you've shown, were there any other photographs taken of any injuries or marks?
No.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Meyer, anything further?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. You may step down, ma'am.
Your Honor, state would ask that Officer Evans be released.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
And ma'am, you're released from your subpoena. You're free to go. So members of the jury, I previously instructed you on the purpose of this evidence regarding the February 2010 incidents and the uses for which you may consider that evidence. And again, if you believe this evidence, you may consider it only for the limited purposes for which it was received, and you may not consider it for any other purposes. Ms. France, further evidence?
Yes, Your Honor, state would call Leslie Bond.
Special Ed on the bottom, raise your right leg. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you now give the court in the case now being heard shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please have a seat.
Ms. France?
Thank you. Ma'am, if you would please state your name for the jury and spell it for the court reporter.
Leslie Bond, Lesliebond.
How are you employed?
I'm a corporal with the Durham Police Department.
On April 3rd and 4th, 2011, how were you employed?
I was an investigator with the Domestic Violence Unit.
Do you have an occasion to be involved in the investigation of a stabbing on Reginald Day that occurred April 3rd, 2011?
I did.
As part of that investigation, did you go to the hospital where the victim was located with investigator Mary Ann Baum?
I did.
And what was the purpose for going there?
We were there to speak to the victim at the time and figure out what kind of information we could get from him, as well as take any pictures of any injuries that we might see.
And were you asking Reginald Day questions, or was Mary Ann Bond asking questions?
I believe it was only Sergeant Bond at the time, but I was taking notes and documenting what I heard.
What, if anything, did you hear the victim say?
Could you move your microphone a little closer to your mouth, ma'am?
He had said that she had and by she I mean Miss Mangum had disrespected him by bringing other guys to the home, that there had been an argument between the two of them somewhere in the bedroom and hallway, which resulted in him being stabbed. Several times he stated he didn't remember certain happenings at the apartment. I heard him say that he had struggled with her, that neither party had indicated verbally that they were wanting to exit the altercation.
Hold on just a second. If you could slow down and move the microphone just a little bit closer.
That neither party had indicated that they were wanting to stop fighting. That he had told her to leave his apartment, and that he'd grabbed her, and when she told him to let her go, he let her go. He said that she left the room and came back to where he was, which was in the hallway at that time, with a knife, and stated that he wasn't going to put his hands on her, and stated to him that he wasn't going to put his hands on her. He stated that he tried to leave out of the front door when he saw her, but that he was stabbed in the back somewhere. He stated that he hadn't seen the injuries himself. He stated that he was interested in prosecuting and signed a consent form for Sergeant Bond to obtain his medical records. He gave us consent for a crime scene technician to take some photos of him in the hospitals due to the
Slow down, please.
I'm sorry. Due to the surgical wound on his abdomen, he was not moved to locate the original wound site, and it was not readily seen on his left side, but was possibly located farther behind.
And someone from forensics took those photographs?
Yes.
And did you do other things in this investigation?
I also located the 911 calls in reference to the incident, and there were multiple ones.
And were those calls recorded?
Yes, they were.
Now, as far as the initial case, was that all that you did in the initial days?
Yes. Well, there was also an interview that I also attended with Sergeant Bond. It was one of the neighbors.
And who was that interview of?
Let me pull that up real quick. It was a Miss Hayes.
Now, in February 17th and 18th of 2010, how were you employed?
Oh, with the Durham Police Department of Domestic Violence Unit.
And on those dates, do you have any occasion to be called or do any investigation in reference to a domestic violence incident that occurred at 2220 Lincoln Street?
Yes.
And what were your duties assigned as to that case?
I was assigned as the lead investigator for that particular incident.
And during that particular incident, did you speak both with the defendant and the victim in that case?
Yes, I did.
As to the victim, Milton Walker, did you ask him what happened?
I did.
What did Milton Walker told you what happened as far as the injury to property and the assault?
He had told me, let me get my notes from that. With regards to the assault, she was trying to take a picture with her cell phone of his genitalia because she threatened to send it out to other people, and so he had pushed her off of him.
And again, talk slowly, please.
And as he was pushing her away, she said, "Don't you ever put your hands on me." And then he was blocking her punches and trying to hold her down. And she had told him to let her go. and he asked her if she was going to calm down. He thought she'd calm down, so he left the room. And then she hit him on the back with a folding chair and then grabbed a stepladder and started poking him with it. And then made the comment, "I got a better idea, I'm gonna get a knife." And during that incident, he had said that his shirt was now down around his ankles and nearly tripped running out of the house, out behind the school building and into the school. And there's a threat that she had made that she was going to kill him, stab him, or whatever, that he had made, or she had made to him when he had returned back to the scene once he saw the police had arrived. And his car was damaged with a vacuum cleaner that had smashed his windshield, and his tires were deflated that had been stabbed.
Did you observe any injuries on Melton Walker?
I did.
And did you photograph those injuries?
I did.
Now approach the witness, John.
Yes. Okay.
Officer, I'll show you what's been marked, State's Exhibit 188 through 201. If you'll see if you can identify those as a group.
Yes.
And what are they as a group?
There are injuries that I had taken pictures of Mr. Melton Walker.
And other than the State's Exhibit sticker, have they been altered in any way?
Not to my knowledge.
And did they accurately show Milton Walker's injuries as they were depicted as you took pictures of?
Yes.
You know, the state would move to enter into evidence 188 through 201.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
They're allowed for illustrative purposes.
Madam Clerk, if you can turn the screen back on. Ma'am, if you will begin with 188 and place it up on the elbow. Come here, approach the witness, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, what does that picture show?
That is an overview. It's an overview of Mr. Melton Walker.
And 189? What does that show?
That is the back of Mr. Walker. It's his neck up here, and then this is about midway down the scratch.
Thank you. 190?
This is a close-up of that scratch that's on the middle of his back.
191?
Those are wounds to his right area above his elbow. There's a scratch this way, come to the side here, some on the inside of the arm, and then a little bit lower, and then also right down here.
And 192?
This is the left side of Mr. Milton Walker's neck, where there's some scratches here around his neck.
Thank you. 193?
This is an overview from the neck down of Mr. Milton Walker's chest and arms down to his fingers. There were injuries that were noted here on his right arm on the inside, some of the inner arm, around his wrist.
And states Exhibit 194.
Oh, this is actually a closer up. I'd missed one that was up near his almost armpit area on the right side. And then I think this was just where he was bending over.
And states Exhibit 195.
Right, this is the right arm where those injuries were noted here on the inner arm, and then more detailed, more on the inside of the arm, on the upper area, closer to his shoulder.
And 196.
This is a closer picture of the injuries that were sustained on his right forearm. A large area here, more scratches on the inside, and then up around the elbow.
And 197.
These were more close up, the injuries that were on his right arm, closer to his wrist. Here, here, some here, and then here.
And 198.
This was just a little bit farther away for a more overview of those same injuries.
And 199.
Okay, this is backside of his elbow on the right side, where there's some crisscrossing marks.
Thank you. And 200.
This is just a variation of that image, just a little bit farther away.
And 201.
And this is the right inner arm, kind of near the shoulder. So if he was holding his arm open like this, just kind of in the bicep inner area.
Thank you, officer. You can say that loud. Did you also talk with the defendant?
I did.
Did you observe the defendant and look at her to see if she had any injuries?
I did.
And did she have any injuries?
There were no visible injuries. She had noted that there was a pimple on her forehead that had popped.
As far as her, the rest of her face, her lips, or anywhere else, did you discuss any injuries with her at that time?
I did. There was some fresh blood that was kind of on the inside of her lip, and I'd asked her about that. Her lips had looked chapped, like she'd possibly recently bitten them since the incident happened over 12 hours earlier.
Did you notice any other injuries or discuss any other injuries with the defendant?
I'd asked her numerous times during the interview if she was in any pain, having any pain, anything like that. And she had told me she hadn't been on any medication, hadn't been on any medication that day, was supposed to be taking it. She wasn't in any pain. She did say that her head had ached, but there was nothing visible. And other than having had a spinal tap the previous day, there was nothing that she was able to tell me or show me that had been injured.
Did she tell you, as far as the assault and the injury, the damage to the vehicle or the communicating threat, did she tell you anything about what happened as to those three events?
At first she was not forthcoming with saying that she had done that. And near the end of the conversation, she had admitted to damaging his property.
Did she ever tell you what happened as far as the assault or communicating threat?
Yes, she had told me that, there weren't any problems that day, but that an argument happened after dinner, and she was speaking to him about him complaining about the kids not being up after themselves, and she asked him if that meant he wanted to leave. So she said the conversation deteriorated and slinging insults back and forth, and that during the conversation she'd taken out her cell phone and told him that she was going to take pictures of his small penis and send it to everyone. So she bent down with her camera and said that that was when he had hit her in the head, which caused her to fall. And he had grabbed her around the neck and started hitting her in the face and causing her to scratch his arms.
Did she say how many times he hit her in the face?
She did not. She said that he had grabbed some clothes and walked out of the house, and she saw him running around the yard with the vacuum and smashing his windows, and this was the original explanation as to what had happened. And she said that when she arrived, or when he had arrived back to the house, that she said, "I will stab you if you come back into my house," and that she was then basically taken into custody at that time.
Now, after you talked with her, what happened as far as the defendant? You said that she was not complaining of pain, didn't appear to have any injuries.
Correct.
What happened after you finished talking to her?
After she had admitted to everything that happened that day, I told her I was going to go get a piece of paper for her to write down what she told me, and I left the room to go get the paper, and within a couple of minutes she began complaining of pain and pacing around the room, and then laid down on the floor, and I'd gone back to the room. There was an officer who was standing right outside the room, and we asked her if she needed EMS, and so we contacted EMS for her.
And this was immediately prior to her writing a statement?
Correct.
Did she ever write a statement?
No, she did not.
No further questions, John.
Cross-examination.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Sergeant Bond. I want to talk about the February 17th, 2010 incident first. And you said when she was discussing what happened with you, and even when you were talking with Milton, did Mr. Walker admit that he held her down by her neck?
Let me see what his exact words were. He had merely said to me that he was blocking her punches and holding her down.
No. But he did admit to holding her down.
Correct.
You never actually witnessed any of the events of that evening?
Correct.
Okay. Now to go, I guess, to the April 3rd incident, which I guess your role is more the April 4th interviewing, being present at the interview of Day in the hospital. You noted in your report, and you testified, that one of the things he said was that neither party had indicated verbally that they wanted to exit the altercation, correct?
Correct.
Does it require a verbal indication to exit an altercation?
Objection, no.
Sustained.
What are some of the ways someone could exit an altercation?
Objection, no.
Sustained.
If someone went into a bathroom and closed and locked the door, and put a locked door between them and the person they were having a fight with, in your experience, would that be an indication they wanted to exit the altercation?
Objection, no.
Sustained.
How long have you been an investigator with the Durham Police Department?
I've been an investigator for 6 years.
Okay. And how many incidents have you investigated in that time with domestic violence or violence in general?
Hundreds.
Okay.
Hundreds.
When have these fights always stopped only when someone said, "Let's stop the fight"?
Objection, no.
Sustained.
How is it generally known that the altercation has ended?
Objection, no.
Sustained.
Did Mr. Day tell you, he did indicate to you at that time He didn't say anything about money, correct?
Let me see. I don't have anything here about money.
So the only thing he told you is that Miss Mangum had been disrespecting him by bringing men over.
Well, in my narrative here, it also says that I wasn't in the room for the entire interview, so I don't know what was said when I wasn't in the room.
Right. But at least when you were there was at least an element of disrespect that led to this
Correct.
argument. And now you said, where was the original wound site? You weren't able to move him to see it?
Correct.
Where was the original wound site, or have you ever been able to visualize?
I never saw it in the hospital, and this was my only dealings with it.
Did you record this interview with Mr. Day?
To the best of my knowledge, no. I mean, I would have had a transcript had I had one.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Ms. Franks?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you, ma'am. You may step down.
Your Honor, we would ask that Officer Bond be released.
Any objection?
No.
All right, ma'am, you're released from your subpoena. You're free to go. And members of the jury, a portion of that testimony dealt with prior occasion in February 2010 in which the defendant was involved in confrontation with another individual, namely Milton Walker. And again, I explained to you the limited purpose of that evidence, and so if you believe that evidence, you can consider it, but only for the limited purpose for which it was received. You may not consider it for any other purposes, and the instruction I gave you previously applies to this evidence as well. Ms. Franks, further evidence?
Your Honor, may Mr. Minor and I approach?
Yes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and take a recess until 4 o'clock. We're awaiting the arrival of a witness. And so we're going to be in recess till 4 o'clock. Please recall the instructions I've given you. Don't talk among yourselves or with anyone else about this case. Don't form or express any opinions about the outcome. No media or independent investigation regarding these matters. And please have no conversation or communication with parties, witnesses, or lawyers. If you'll be sure to leave your notebooks in your chair, and if you'll gather in the deliberation room at 4 o'clock. Everyone else, please remain seated while the jurors excuse themselves.